right, so get this. Today we're going deep on social classes, but, like, not the ones you're thinking of,
Oh, this is good.
right? It's about how we as humans classify animals
Mm-hmm.
and what that tells us about, like, how we see the world.
It's fascinating, because it goes way beyond just like the biology stuff, like
Yeah.
putting animals in categories. We're really
Yeah.
talking about how we think, even how we communicate and create.
Yeah. Okay, so our guidebook for this deep dive
Yes.
is Kenneth Burke's A Rhetoric of Motives.
Oh, a classic.
I know, the title, it sounds a little
Little dense, yeah.
intimidating, but
Yeah.
trust me, this book is anything but boring.
It's true.
It goes into psychology, art, even parenting,
Yeah, it's all connected.
and how they're all connected to language.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so set the stage for us.
Okay, so Burke, he makes this really interesting argument against the idea that, like, psychology is the only way to understand motives.
Okay.
He says that language itself creates this kind of push and pull.
Push and pull.
He calls it a dialectic.
Okay, a dialectic.
Yeah.
I need that broken down a bit.
Sure. Think of it like a conversation or debate.
Okay.
Where ideas are kind of clashing and changing. And for Burke, language is always creating these little debates,
In our heads.
in our minds, yeah, pushing us to define things by, like, what they're not, they're opposites.
Okay, I'm starting to see this.
Yeah.
So it's not just the words themselves, it's those hidden, like, tensions between them.
Yeah.
The relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this dialectic play out in real life?
Okay, so one example he uses is this idea of self-interference.
Okay.
And what he's getting at is it's not just about, like, those subconscious urges that we always hear about in psychology.
Yeah.
Language itself makes us think about abstract stuff, which separates us from pure instinct.
Whoa, wait, so are you saying language is what makes us human?
It's a big idea, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of his most interesting arguments. He suggests that this, like, ability to use symbols and abstract concepts is what separates us from other animals. And this separation is key because when we use language, we're constantly making distinctions.
Like between this or that.
Exactly, creating categories. We see the difference between this and that, and bam, we're classifying.
That's like our brains are these little sorting machines.
Right.
Constantly dividing the world up.
Yeah, and we're doing it all the time without even realizing it.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So it's like way deeper than how we usually think about, like, social classes.
It is. For Burke, this classifying is constant. It's like it's built in.
Into language.
Into language itself.
Okay, so we're always classifying.
We are.
But what happens when we make things? Like, does that change things? When we're making art,
Right.
like music or paintings, poetry,
Right.
does this instinct still apply?
That's where Burke gets really interesting, right? He brings up this idea of the ideal audience.
Okay.
And he's basically saying art for art's sake might not be the whole story.
Okay.
Even when an artist says they're creating just for themselves, often there's this imagined audience.
So even when you think you're alone, you're still thinking about who might see your work.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And that audience, even if it's imaginary, becomes really important.
Okay.
Because Burke argues it represents something deeper within the artist.
Oh, so it's like they're trying to communicate with a part of themselves.
Yeah, like a mirror. That's insightful.
He actually says it much better.
Oh, does he have a quote?
He does, he says. A particular audience may be but a pretext, itself the symbol of a transcendence within himself, or, more accurately, a transcendence deriving from the nature of symbols as such.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
It is.
But I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah?
It's not
Wow.
just self-expression. It's like using art to understand your own inner world.
Right.
But how does this classifying instinct, this need to categorize, play out in normal life?
Well, Burke uses a pretty surprising example. Parenting.
He sees this parent-child dynamic as this amazing example of how classification and these power struggles.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Parenting. Explain this one to me, because I'm not quite seeing it yet.
All right.
Okay, so last time we were talking about how Kenneth Burke sees this this thing with parenting, right?
Yeah.
As this unexpected example of how we, like, constantly categorize
Right.
and have these little power struggles, even in a family.
Yes, exactly.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this one, so, like, break it down for me.
Okay, so think about how parents treat their kids.
Okay,
On one hand, kids are part of the family.
right, same class, right.
Exactly. They belong to that same group, same class as their parents.
Yeah?
But at the same time, there's this tendency to see them as, like, special.
Totally, like they're superior or something?
Yeah, even superior in some ways, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Like, parents will do anything that makes your kid happy, even when they're, like, totally acting up.
Right. And Burke, he captures this so well.
Does he have a quote for this?
He does, he says. The parent's courtship of the child in allowing the child to be a tyrant in the home is thus roundabout an ideal manifestation of the very hierarchic principle under which the parents suffer.
So even though parents are, like, technically in charge, they're giving up all this power.
Yes,
And Burke saying that actually reinforces the hierarchy,
it does.
even though it seems like the opposite.
Yeah, it's a paradox.
That's wild.
It is, and it shows just how complex these power dynamics are.
Yeah.
And it's not just parents and kids.
Oh, so it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Burke's point is these kinds of classifications, these power struggles, they're happening all the time, all around us.
So how much of this classifying is, like, on purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Are we consciously choosing to put things and people into categories?
Right.
Or is it, like, more automatic?
Well, Burke would say it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
We have this drive to classify, right? This need to, like, make sense of the world.
Right, by dividing it up.
Exactly, by dividing it into categories.
Yeah.
But those categories, they're shaped by our culture, our upbringing, all of that.
So it's both, like it's nature and nurture.
It is. It's this complex interplay.
We're born with this instinct,
Mm-hmm.
but then how we actually classify, that's learned.
Right. It's influenced by our environment.
Okay, so then the categories we use aren't, like, neutral, right?
Exactly. This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
They carry all these assumptions, values, power dynamics, all of that.
So the way we classify the world shows our own biases.
It does, yeah.
That's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is a little bit unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you realize how much power our words have.
Over how we see people.
Absolutely.
This makes me think about the ideal audience again.
Oh, yeah.
Like if an artist is using their work to explore their own inner world, their own categories,
Right.
are they also, like, reinforcing those for their audience?
That's a very good point. And it highlights, one of the tensions in Burke's work.
Yeah.
This idea that language can be this tool for self-discovery, but also potentially, this weapon that can perpetuate harmful ideas.
It depends how you use it.
It all comes down to how we use it, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about this classifying instinct, the
Yeah.
power struggles it creates, how language can be like a tool and a weapon.
Right.
But I want to know, like, how does this all play out in everyday life?
Okay.
How do we become more aware of this classifying thing
Right.
and use language more responsibly?
Well, Burke gives us some really practical tools for doing that.
Okay.
One of the most important is this concept he calls the pentad.
The pentad.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
It's a framework for analyzing human motivation. And it can be really helpful for understanding how our classifications, like, shape our actions.
Oh, break it down for me.
Okay, so the pentad has 5 key elements: act, agent, agency, scene, and purpose.
5, okay.
So when you're trying to understand something, you can ask yourself, what happened?
That's the act.
Right, who did it?
The agent.
How did they do it?
The agency.
Where and when did it happen?
The scene.
And why did they do it?
The purpose. Okay.
Exactly.
So it's like, what, a detective's toolkit
It's a great way to think about it, yeah.
for analyzing behavior?
It is.
I like that.
And one of the things Burke highlights with the pentad is that the relationships between those 5 things are really important too.
Oh, the relationships between them.
Yeah, like how does the scene affect the agent? How does the agency shape the act? By looking at those relationships, we can start to see these hidden patterns.
So it's not just a checklist.
Mhm.
It's a way to see how all these different factors work together.
Yeah, it's more holistic.
I'm seeing how this could be helpful, like, in so many situations. from
Right.
personal stuff to bigger social issues.
Exactly. And Burke uses it for all sorts of things. Political speeches,
Yeah.
literature, even conversations.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a game changer for me. It's like a whole new language for talking about human behavior.
Yeah.
But, like, how does this all connect back to the classifying animal idea?
That's a great question.
Does the pentad help us see our own classifying tendencies?
It does. And the connections in how we use language to categorize and understand motives.
Okay.
Like, we create labels and categories for different actions, right? And we assign motives based on our beliefs and norms.
So our language shapes how we judge people's motives.
Exactly.
We put these labels on things that are probably way more complicated.
Right. And this is one of Burke's most important insights. Language isn't just describing reality.
Hmm.
It's actively shaping it.
So you're saying that even how we think about our own motives is, like, influenced by language?
You got it.
Wow, it's like we're trapped in this web of words and categories.
Yeah, and that's why Burke says it's so important to be critical of the language we use.
Oh, okay.
We need to be aware of the assumptions in our words.
The categories, the biases.
All of it, yeah. Only then can we use language responsibly.
This is blowing my mind. I'm seeing the world in a whole new way.
I know, Burke's work is really insightful.
It's like I had these blurry glasses on my whole life.
Yeah,
And now he just gave me a pair with perfect vision.
I love that analogy.
We've covered so much.
We have.
This classifying animal thing, the pentad, how language can be this weapon but also a tool.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to listen to this whole thing again.
I know, there's so much there.
But before we go too far, let's take a quick break and come back for the last part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back. Final part of our deep dive into Kenneth Burke's A Rhetoric of Motives.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey.
It has, exploring this classifying animal
Mm-hmm.
and how much language shapes our world.
It's amazing how relevant his ideas still are, you know?
It really is. So
Yeah.
in this last, Burke brings us back to social hierarchies, power dynamics, all that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little nervous to get into this, to be honest.
I hear you.
It feels like a minefield.
It can be, but Burke's approach is really thoughtful. He argues that these social hierarchies, they're not just like imposed from above. They're also built and reinforced through language itself.
Through how we label people, categorize them.
Exactly, the ways we categorize and label, yeah.
So it's not just those in power making the rules.
Right.
It's also about how everyday language, like, keeps those systems going.
It is, yeah. He uses this term symbolic action
Oh, symbolic action.
to describe how language doesn't just reflect reality, it shapes it.
Okay.
Our words, our categories, the stories we tell, it all contributes to creating these hierarchies.
So even words and phrases that seem harmless
Mm-hmm.
can actually have a huge impact on how we treat people.
They really can. Burke's point is language is never neutral. It carries all this history, social meanings, power dynamics, all baked in.
This makes me think about all the ways we categorize people without even realizing it.
Right.
The labels we use, the assumptions we make.
It all adds up.
Yeah.
And that's why Burke says we have to be more critical of how language is used to justify inequality. We have to question our assumptions, look for the power dynamics hidden in our words.
And then use our words to actually make things better.
Exactly. Use them to create a more just world.
Wow, that's a powerful message.
It is.
It's not just about understanding how language works. It's about using that understanding to make a difference.
Absolutely, to make a positive change.
Man, this deep dive has given me so much to think about.
Me too.
It's like I've been seeing the world with blurry vision,
Yeah.
and Burke just handed me a pair of glasses with perfect vision.
I love that.
We've covered so much, the classifying animal, the pentad, how language can be this weapon, but also this tool for good.
It's been a lot. Yeah.
I feel like I need to go back and listen to this whole thing again.
I know there's so much there to unpack.
It really is.
But if there's one thing I hope you take away from this,
Yeah.
it's this. Pay attention to the language you use, question those assumptions you have, and never underestimate how powerful words are.
They really shape our reality.
We do.
And to all our listeners out there, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
How has this deep dive changed your perspective?
Mm-hmm.
Are you more aware of how you classify the world around you?
Yeah. Share your thoughts.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely.
And remember, this is just the beginning when it comes to Kenneth Burke.
Oh, just scratching the
A Rhetoric of Motives. It's a book you can keep coming back to.
Mm-hmm.
Find something new every time.
For sure.
All right, until next time, keep diving deep. Keep those minds open.
Sounds good.